everyone, and welcome. I'm Jennifer, and you are listening to the Ego Next Door podcast. Today, I'm going to share a bit more about my story, open up about one of my abuse experiences and the potential rationalization behind it. Many of you who are listening might have bumped into this podcast without really knowing a thing about me, and most of those who are listening that already know me probably don't. So here we go. I was born in France and raised in Canada, the United States, and also Portugal. I don't really associate myself with any nationality because, in all honesty, I never felt that home was a place. So I often say that airports feel like home, which is true to me. I'm passionate about artistic expression, whether it be through writing, photography, music, or cinema. However, I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in languages and publishing, specializing in French, Portuguese, and English, a master's degree in multimedia communications, specializing in audiovisual production, and a Ph.D. degree in digital platforms, which I am due to officially complete between October and November of this year. Professionally, I have worked in more jobs and fields than I can outnumber, but some of them include barista, barmaid, sandwich maker, supermarket staff, mystery client and auditor, language tutor for kids and adults, English teacher in a small village for a children's class, translator, editor, proofreader, localizer, and presently, I am a writer, photographer, and a research scientist. This has inspired me to lean into one of my greatest passions in life, endlessly asking the question why until I'm either too exhausted from the search or too excited to stop the pursuit. Creating this podcast might be hinting that I can never exhaust this pursuit, especially if it means the possibility to help anyone in the world who might be listening to be inspired to get going, make a change, or choose themselves a little bit more today. With this, I guess that I should just jump right into the topic of conversation, right? Honestly, it still sounds a little strange to say it aloud, but I know that this is part of the process, so I'm here for it. I have lived a life that on paper seems quite ideal and unconventionally exciting, and many have always assumed that I am the person that my own mother has painted me to be. An ungrateful, selfish, unstable, problematic daughter. But the truth is, I am a victim of domestic violence, and now I am a survivor. My memories as a child are lucid, tense, and gloomy. I know that I endured physical and verbal abuse and emotional neglect. Due to this, I have lived for the last 30 years with PTSD and OCD. This has manifested itself in many ways, such as panic attacks, anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts and memories, flashbacks, severe emotional distress, and physical reactions that remind me of the traumatic events. Although I do not recall every single detail about the abuse instances, I do remember everything else. Honestly, I believe that the memories regarding the physical abuse are more flashes than detailed memories because my brain does something that is scientifically known as dissociative amnesia. This is when your brain walls off the memory of a traumatic experience and you just can't remember everything or access that memory. Some stressful experiences such as childhood abuse, sexual assault, physical assault, injury, the sudden death of a parent or a trusted caregiver, witnessing the death or abuse of a person, being diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, combat in wars, and natural disasters can be so overwhelming that memories of these events hide like a shadow in the brain. However, these memories can come back to your subconscious by what is commonly known as a trigger. This is when your brain connects sight, sound, or scent to a traumatic memory. In moments in which your brain is triggered, your brain does not perceive the memory as being in the past. You are emotionally taken back to that event and things can feel like they are happening all over again, although they are not. This is the complex duality of trauma because if on one hand you do not remember the details, on another you might suddenly remember it all. Just because your brain has been programmed to protect itself from unwanted threats and anything that can remind you of it. In basic terms, due to trauma, the electrical impulses that bust down your sensory neurons, ping your brain's fear, and make you fight, flee, or freeze are put out of whack. Having post-traumatic stress could equate to having a malfunction in the brain. A healthy brain will be able to perceive whether an initial threat turns out to be harmless, but a traumatized brain will remain in the fear zone and create unwanted feelings, regardless of the initial threat being harmless or not. In my personal case, this has manifested in many ways. For example, since I was a child until adulthood, I used to be frequently and severely slapped in the face by my mother. These slaps were often done from behind my back and without warning. This triggered a strong trauma response in me that can still be noticed today. Basically, anytime I perceive a shadow, object, movement, or person in that specific angle where her hand would fly towards me to go in for the slap, I still crouch and put my arms around my head as to protect myself. This has happened several times in public, and I must say that I used to be very ashamed of it. When I say ashamed of it, I actually mean of my reaction, not the explanation that triggered my behavior. Because for a long time, I was convinced that the beatings were called for, and that I very much deserved it. I can remember a time in my first year of college when a group of friends from my class gathered for a surprise cake during lunchtime to celebrate me and a friend whose birthday was in the same week. When they were around the table singing happy birthday and clapping, I suddenly crouched and lifted my arm up to protect myself. In reality, there was absolutely no harm, but in my head there was a sudden flashback of my mother's long-fingered hand with 3 gold rings and sharp nails swinging in my face at full force. Of course, I was too ashamed to mention this to my colleagues, so I laughed it off and said something like, "Oh, it's a bug." But deep down, I was feeling a mix of shame and sadness for what I had lived, and my reaction still being the same years after the abuse. This reaction would be at its peak anytime I was next to my mother, even if I logically knew that I wasn't going to get a slap in that moment. Anytime she got up and turned to me, I couldn't help but crouch even more aggressively, and my neck and shoulder would get so tense that it hurt. She would often make fun of it, saying things like, "You think I'm gonna hit you, huh? You really like playing the victim, don't you? Ooh, be careful. Yeah, I'm gonna slap you." She would laugh it off and invalidate my feelings, make me doubt myself, make me ashamed of my natural traumatized reaction, as if the abuse had never happened before. But in all honesty, these slaps were just a small fragment of the real abuse I endured. Scientifically speaking, narcissists' reaction to these moments are quite interesting, especially when they are confronted with the result of their own action towards someone, whether that be their own child, romantic partner, family member, or anyone else. I've often wondered if they are conscious of the damage they have caused, or if they truly believe in their words. But either way, what difference does it make? You are the victim, the person is your abuser, they have moments in which they make you feel that they have love or an overflowing sense of pride towards your existence, and that makes you feel great. But in many moments, you are not at ease, and deep down you might know this. You sense this nagging sensation of discomfort, as if your guts are screaming. Your energy is suddenly depleted, and you don't feel like you are a person anymore, that you feel that you are simply an extension of their existence. And in reality, that is why they look at you with pride. Not because they see you as the empathetic, wonderful human that you probably are, but because you are their project in the making, and until now, it is working. You are under control. But why is someone that is in control still displeased? Why does it seem like it's never enough? Well, I have news for you. It seems like it's never enough because it never is. Narcissists are negatively special, and I say this because it's like they're a 2.0 version of a human without being a human at all. Narcissists have the number one trait of humans, which is being forever unsatisfied, along with other traits that make them appear anything but soulful beings. And they use several manipulation tactics to drive you crazy, and often you are temporarily driven into insanity, counting your losses, left empty-handed and broken-hearted, as you watch your bridges that they burned dust away into ashes. On the next episode, I will share more about my story. We will also look into specific manipulation tactics often used by narcissists to convince you that leaving or going no contact would be a mistake. Spoiler alert, it would not. If you suspect that you are entangled in a relationship with someone like this, reach out to a qualified professional, or if you cannot afford one right now, find someone that you can talk to, ideally in an abuse survivor community. Thank you for listening to the Ego Next Door podcast. See you soon, and I hope you have a wonderful day. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to hear more, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you would like to access all our updates and free resources, make sure to follow us on our socials at Ego Next Door on Instagram and Twitter. The Ego Next Door podcast is presented solely for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The content here is not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, or medical treatment of a qualified healthcare provider. Reliance on any information provided here is at your own risk. If you or someone you know is in crisis or experiencing suicidal thoughts, please reach out immediately to someone who can help right away. Call your national emergency services or go to the nearest hospital.